Once that concept occurs to you, you begin to ask yourself about culture continents or wide areas of the globe where social patterns have developed over millennia of time in which peoples of a variety of ethnic groups, nationalities, language groups, and whatever share common social patterns because they're in some measure responding to similar environment. You and I then live in, as I said, what is called the Baltic culture continent. And by that we mean North America and Northern Europe. And what anthropologists are aware of is that there is enough commonality of cultural values and cultural pattern that Northern Europeans and North Americans have a relatively easy time understanding each other. The Bible, however, came out of what we call the Mediterranean culture continent. By that we mean all of those peoples living around the perimeter of the Mediterranean, everywhere from southern Spain, southern France, southern Italy, Greece, Turkey, all the way across around the end of the Mediterranean, the Middle East, and across North Africa. In those regions where common patterns of agriculture, wine, grapes, some wheat, the domestication of smaller animals, those kind of patterns that developed out of that lifestyle that's a response to that environment resulted in the fact that over this wide area we'll call the Mediterranean culture continent, a variety of social patterns and values began to develop that carried over the millennia and in fact still exist today in many parts of that regions in that part of the world. Now, the Baltic culture continent that you and I live in, anthropologists call a guilt culture. I don't know about you, but it's not real hard to make me feel guilty. My mother did it regularly, very effective. I do it with my students. It's not very difficult for the average American, North American, or European to understand the concept. As soon as I mentioned the word guilt, I saw some smiles on faces. It doesn't require a lot of explanation for you to figure out the concept. The result of that is that people who share that perception of things have a kind of common sensibility that it turns out much of the rest of the world does not share. In fact, the Mediterranean culture continent, both today and in antiquity, is what anthropologists call an honor-shame culture. So what I'd like to do today is I want to explain to you the concept of honor and shame. The concept is not difficult. Talk about a few of the features of the concept. Then I want to tell you stories about my experiences living in an honor-shame culture. I, a Westerner, born, bred, socialized in a guilt culture, I want to tell you some stories about my experiences living in an honor-shame village. And then we're going to look at texts. Texts from Greco-Roman antiquity, a few ancient Jewish texts, and then some biblical texts. And try to ask ourselves whether or not it could be that Westerners misunderstand the texts because we don't have the cultural orientation necessary to understand how they were first written and first read.